Welcome back to Southwest Yard and Garden. We're in the garden of Master Gardener Joe Holdred here in Albuquerque. And Joe, I see you're getting ready to start some beans. You're soaking them first.
Curtis, I always soak my beans. I have a hard time getting beans to come up in Albuquerque. And soaking them for 24 hours seems to improve that immensely. I've tried planting dry beans, and it'll take some time. Somebody told me it took them 18 days for their beans to come up. If you soak them, you'll usually get them between 7 and 10 days. They'll usually come up between 7 and 10 days.
This really does speed it up. I do it. I soak my beans as well. One thing I have to be careful of is I don't leave them in there too long. You said 24 hours safe. I'll usually in the middle of that start them one morning, pour the water off, put it back on. But if you don't have it too deep, so they're on the surface, they still get air. And that's the important thing. But I also see chemicals leaching out, so I also pour that off. So if there's any inhibitors, there may not be, but if there are some with some of these native type beans, pour it off. And the one you've got here is one that we grow here in the Southwest a lot. It's a very large scarlet runner bean?
Scarlet runner bean, yes. I collected these seeds several years ago, and I've been planting them every year since then. I plant a very few of these beans, but because they're not especially edible, you can eat them. You can eat them, but they're not something that you plant to have fresh beans.
So what do you plant them for?
I plant them for the flower, and they grow. They'll run up anything. I've always had them grow into my peach trees. They just grow right up and cover the peach trees if they can reach them, and they have a beautiful red flower most of the time. Sometimes there's a little white flower. Sometimes there's actually a white bean instead of a scarlet bean.
Right.
When they dry out, they're really a beautiful scarlet red bean, and you can see from the size of them, they're huge. They're a huge bean.
Good, and yeah, as a dry bean, they're a good bean to cook with, but they're just not like some of the others. They're fun to grow because they're more of a less developed type bean. But what I like about them, I plant a big row, and in my garden it creates quite a hassle in the garden because there's a fight going on over the flowers.
That's right.
The old hummingbirds.
No, the hummingbirds really love this, and it's just a feast for the hummingbirds.
And they will fight. If there's more than one in the neighborhood, there's one that's going to try and control all of them. He's forever flying back and forth, fighting over those flowers while the others are coming in and getting the drink.
Yeah, we always have a feeder, but we've had fewer hummingbirds this year. So I'm anxious to get my beans going so I can attract some more hummingbirds.
Well, the red flowers are very attractive to them. And Joe, these are a running bean. I know you also plant the bush type beans. What's your preference there?
Well, my preference is a bush bean. This is a runner or a pole bean, and so you've got these grow up a trellis or a tree or whatever they find to grow on. The bush beans, I have much more success with the bush beans, and I usually get a crop of bush beans from my bush beans, then I fertilize them again and get another crop. So some people say they get a lot better crops from pole beans, but I prefer the bush beans, and that's what I plant as my edible bean.
My experience here is that the pole beans are more sensitive to the dry winds, and so you may get an early crop, and then when the dry winds come, they quit bearing, and maybe later in the fall you'll get a crop. Whereas the bush beans, being lower to ground, are less influenced by the wind, and so you get a more consistent crop with the bush beans here. If you're in a protected backyard like yours, you might be able to get a pretty good pole bean crop.
I possibly could. But beans are like anything else. People have their preferences to which kind of bean they like. And, you know, I like a Blue Lake, stringless Blue Lake, and others say, well, I'd rather have something else. But then there's lots of varieties of beans. They're just like tomatoes.
One of the ones I like was one called Roma.
I never planted the Roma.
Good taste, very good taste, more like a Kentucky Wonder taste, and that's the flavor of a bean that I like.
People are starting to plant this French bean, this the little French bean, and pull it, and you harvest it much earlier than you do. You don't let it develop as far along as you do most beans.
And with a lot of these, if you want to use them as snap beans, if you wait too long, especially in our hot climate, they're going to get those strings in them, and they're going to be a little bit tough. So harvesting early is a good idea.
Right.
Well, thanks. I wish you good luck with your bean crop this year.
I hope I have a good crop. Thank you, Curtis.
Travis Flatt, a master gardener from Albuquerque, has brought us a sample from his own backyard, which illustrates a problem master gardeners around Albuquerque and throughout the state are seeing right now. Travis, what do we have here?
This is a clipping that I took off of a Royal Gala Apple Tree, and it's about 10-year tree, 10-year-old, and it's not the other apples I have in the yard. doesn't seem to have it like this one here, but this one seems to be prone to it, and I've sprayed it for the apple worm, and the codling moth, and about every 14 days since blossoms dropped, but still I get this.
Well, what you've got here is a fungus called powdery mildew. It's causing some leaf distortion. Now we see some chlorosis here, which is related to the soil, not due to the powdery mildew. But we're seeing some leaf distortion here in these younger leaves. The older leaves came in, did not get affected by it, but now the powdery mildew fungus has attacked it. We see the spores on the surface. It looks like somebody's dusted flour over the plant. But the fungus is also inside the leaf. There are sprays for controlling this, but there's a cultural method to do this. One, you notice that some varieties are more sensitive, others are less sensitive to this problem. By choosing the varieties, you can reduce the problem to some extent. But the other thing is time of irrigation and quantity of irrigation. In a lot of cases, we've got people out irrigating in the evening. It creates humidity at night. The nighttime temperatures plus that humidity create a problem with powdery mildew. The powdery mildew needs that cool night temperature and the moisture in the air. So our irrigation can sometimes lead to this. Now we have to irrigate in a dry year like this. What we want to do is irrigate in the morning and not every morning, and that'll help reduce the problem as well. If that's not sufficient though, we may still need to get some of the sprays that are labeled for controlling powdery mildew on apple trees and to follow the directions.